Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The First Ones to Die. I am Jonathan. I am here with my co hosts, Alex and Jerome. Say what up to the people.
Hi.
How's it going?
All right. Today is a very exciting episode because we are going to be recapping, reviewing, discussing Selena the series. Selena the series is on Netflix. It released on December 4th. IMDb describes it as a biography drama musical series about late Tejano singer Selena as her dreams come true and her family makes life changing choices on the singer's journey to success. Series was created by Moises Zamora and stars Christian Serratos of the Walking Dead fame. We all love her as Rosita, and we're gonna dive into the show. You may have
This
seen
is
it
the
already.
most background we've ever given for anything we've ever reviewed ever.
It's been a
I
minute since
mean,
the show came out, so we might as well
that
give
is
them some
true. I mean,
context.
it's been over a month now.
It's been
I'm
over
just
a month.
saying.
It's
I was
it's
just like
it's
you
taken
just
a
going,
minute.
you just running through the whole list. I was like, man, this
It's not a
whoever's
bad
watching
thing.
this episode, listening to this episode, listen, y'all getting like the real deal this time. All right, we're not.
Well,
Exactly.
There's
it's
no messing
also
around.
no, but you do end up giving the directors names like screenwriters and all that, Jerome, like later on. So that
Hmm.
What?
Jonathan's just putting that out first now.
That's
You
true.
do.
We're getting
You
I
that
guess
have
it
out the
does come up
way.
in
yeah, and
conversation
then
at
you
some point.
always say about how it's similar to their like other directing other movies.
Exactly.
So
There
Fair
we
enough.
go.
I'm not
yeah,
picking on you.
yeah,
I'm just commenting
it
on
felt like
the
picking.
facts.
So, Jerome, since you have so much to say, what are your
Ooh.
overarching? We'll get into the nitty gritty later, but what are your overarching thoughts on Selena the series? Did you like it? Was it mad? Did you dislike it? What are your thoughts?
Well, firstly, just letting the record show for anyone who, if this is your first time listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube channels, we spoil stuff here. So right now we're going to give the non-spoiler section and we will let you know when the spoiler section is coming up. Just want to put that out there. Secondly, as far as my feelings on the show, just general thoughts. Um, I honestly, it still is like a process for me. I'm still processing it because it's one of those things where I love the performances. I think everybody does a great job with the performances. I think some of a lot of the parts of the family have a lot of nuance. Um, as like because with the movie they can only do but so much. So because they had 2 hours to kind of tell their story with a show, they can kind of really take their time. They can dive into each family member and really give some context for why they are the way they are, why their job in the family and in the band is so important, that sort of stuff. So I like that aspect. However, I do think the show is a bit too long. There's a couple spots here and there where I felt like there's just extra stuff that's not quite necessary to tell the story. Um, but I like, and we'll get into what I think about it later, and maybe like because right now this is part one. This is like season one, but they call it part one. So maybe in part two, the length will make a lot more sense. So we'll see. But overall, though, I do like it. I just don't love it, I think is the best way to describe it.
That's like fair.
Okay. How about you, Alex?
I didn't like it, like at all. So don't call a show Selena if you're not going to focus on Selena.
I
They
wasn't sure if
made
we were
it.
going to save that for the spoilers because I felt the same way.
I think
Same
I'm
way.
not explaining exactly how it was about the family or how it was about her. I just feel like if you're going to name a series after somebody, it should really focus more so on them. But it wasn't really her series. They could have just
Hmm.
easily named it, Selena and the Boys, which was the band name in English. So, you know, or just something like that, or the history of Selena or something. They shouldn't really have made it Selena the series. I just feel like they didn't. They just
Excuse me.
it wasn't her show. So there was no point to that name at all.
Hmm.
So I wasn't
Yeah,
really a fan of it. What
I
about
100% agree. I was
Hmm.
pretty meh on the show. There were aspects of it that I enjoyed, but there were probably more aspects that I was questioning and thinking about that dampened my enjoyment of the show. Like Alex, you mentioned the fact that it's so surface level. Selena, um, it doesn't really go dive into her personality like really at all. Um, and I we'll get to it later, but I have some thoughts about the show. I was
Yeah.
confused with the tone of the show. It didn't seem like there
Yeah.
was a cohesive tone throughout the entire season, but I'd honestly be willing to give it a second um, chance, maybe a rewatch. I don't really rewatch things that often, but maybe if I did rewatch it, I'd find some new things in there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see that. I will say this, but this has nothing to do with the show. Um, Selena, her name, like, it, I used to grow up calling her Santa Selena, which many people is Saint Selena
Mm-hmm.
to put in there in the English. So, like, I was very excited to see, the Selena movie with Jennifer Lopez.
Did you like the movie?
I
Sorry.
I very much enjoyed the movie.
Mm.
And I think because it showed a lot of struggle on her part, especially when she was little. I think they missed that part in the show. It wasn't um, played on enough, and it was something in the movie I got to feel too. Because growing up, I don't speak Spanish. I've always struggled learning Spanish. I still struggle learning Spanish. I always had that problem. So to see somebody who grew up into this famous musician with who ended up being bilingual, singing Spanish songs and American songs, who was able to almost, I don't want to say flawlessly, but was able to move between the two worlds of like the Mexican culture and the American culture,
Mm-hmm.
was a real aspiration for me, and it was like great to see, and like it was just something I thought I could always achieve because there was this person who did. In the show, I feel like it really missed that part. It does focus on her family and all that, but it doesn't focus, I think, enough on the cultural aspects of like the constantly having to integrate between, this music to this music, this language to this language, how she became popular amongst the Latin people, but still so many American followers, and just I feel like they missed out on that part with the Selena series. I feel like it wasn't brought up enough. And that was something from the movies, from her career, that I really looked up to. So I
Yeah.
really think they could have done more with that.
Agreed.
Especially like in
Um,
her younger years, because she didn't know Spanish. She was like had to learn it while
Mm-hmm.
she sang.
exactly. Yeah, and by the way, speaking of her younger years, shout out to the actress who portrayed Selena in her younger years. I need to look up her name. I don't know if anybody has her name available, but she,
I
to
don't.
me, did an amazing job
She
at
was
portraying Selena in her younger years, and was a great
adorable.
singer.
Yeah, she did good. She did good.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, shall we get into spoilers?
I think we need to.
We need
yeah.
to.
There's a lot to because I was gonna say because the only reason because I'm trying to be better because y'all out
Mm-hmm.
here doing
2021, it's your year.
well y'all out here like clowning me every time because like, he spoils all the movies so so
You know
I'm
what?
trying to be better with not with what details I do
It
and
comes
don't
from a
share.
place of love.
I
It
know.
does.
I'm just
And
listen.
that's just
We're
to
all
us.
the first ones will slash behind the other station, but first ones to die family. We're all family here.
Well,
We're
you
basically
spoil
like
the
brothers
thing
and
is,
sisters.
you spoil stuff for us. You're very generous towards our audience, where you give them a fair warning, you give them a heads up. But when it comes to us,
You just get
there's
really
there's no
into
holds
yeah
barred.
the conversation, and then even though we repeatedly told you we haven't watched it, you end up. I think a lot for me is that we end up arguing. We just start throwing facts at each other,
Yeah.
and
See,
some of
then
those facts
I
I
gotta hit you with
haven't
these
learned
facts.
yet. With a movie I haven't been able to watch yet, and it's like, Jerome,
You're the
But
Tom Holland of our group.
huh?
but I was gonna I what I was gonna say is I completely agree with your
Hmm.
both of your um opinions on the fact that this show should not be called Selena the series, because Selena is barely in it. And when she is the perfect person, most perfect lady I've ever seen in television ever. She never complains. She's never angry. She's very rarely, like, anytime she's emotional, it's because someone has done something to her, but it's never because she's done something to someone else to garner, like, to earn her a chance to apologize or
Yeah.
anything. She's just always good all the time. And so she's
Right.
flat. And they try to make it up with the family, but then it's like, why isn't this show called The Quintanillas? Or why isn't this show called, like you said, Selena y los Dinos? Or, something
Good
that
job.
Or
reference.
Selena's
Thank you.
dad, or
I've been
Selena's
I
brother.
literally
Yeah.
last night I worked on all my Spanish to make sure I
No, I
pronounced their
won't lie.
names
Like
right and
an
everything.
hour before we started talking, I had to ask my mom. I'm like, say Selena's last name to me so I can say it right. Like, because it's embarrassing. The Mexican cannot say the last name properly.
I had to practice
that's
that
that's fair.
multiple times to show some respect to
Yeah.
Selena and her
Well,
family.
because we were talking about it, and I was like, well, first off, I do want to make it clear what the Selena's name. Her name is like Selena Quintanilla
Like, yeah.
Perez, Perez, and like that part I wanted to emphasize because her family took that away from her when she like passed. They cut out her husband from the will. They took that last name, and she was just buried with her family name. And it's like Selena did love her husband. So how
Mm-hmm.
can they like go ahead and just rip them apart? See, that's what the thing I didn't like. Another thing I didn't like about the series, they made the family look like it was all wholesome and good. And even though they were stressed, they were always there for each other. No, her father pulled her out of school from eighth grade, or I think when she was eight. No, eighth grade. He stuck all his children on a bus to live out his like dreams, and they make it look like he's just like, oh yeah, I'm doing it for. No, you tore your children's childhood away.
Mm-hmm. Which I think, and that's why I meant by, I think part two is gonna be like, it's one of those things where part two is probably supposed to be like the antithesis to part one, where it's like, all right, finally the kids will confront dad, and Selena will finally be with Chris Perez and all this stuff. But it's like, yeah, but the problem is that you're trying to make a show for people now. They don't have part two yet. So part one has to be enticing enough to get people to even come back to watch part two.
But that
And it's
never
not
really
there yet. It's
that
not
never
there.
even really happened though. She never really confronted her father. They
That's true.
started they
That's true.
like um I believe her name was Yolanda
Salvador?
Salvador? Yeah,
Or
Salvador.
yeah,
Yolanda
Salvador.
Salvador.
The fan club.
Ooh,
Which
yeah.
I love her introduction in the
Yes.
show, because it's like this dark, dingy, like,
I
restaurant.
did like that.
And they were like, this is gonna be the villain. And I'm
It was
like,
straight up like
okay.
novella setting. Like I got a twinge in my. I was like, oh man, I know she's a bad one, but I already like her now.
Yes.
Um, but they don't show that like she wasn't manager of the fan club long before she killed Selena.
Hmm. Well,
And like
already, because she's what, at that, by the time they end part one, she's already what, like in her
it's already
20s
around
or
like
19?
1991.
Yeah, so it's
She's
1991,
not
20. In
1992.
the final episode, they say she's 20.
yeah, so
Yeah,
she's only got, because I
4
had to look
years.
this up. I was like, how young was she when she died? She's only died 24.
Yeah,
So
so
it's
she's
like,
got like 4 more years. So she
yeah,
never really kind of confronted her family about it. And like it would, yeah, if they focus more on like the other parts of the family, maybe, but they focus more on the brother and the dad. Like her
well, they give Suzette a
younger,
lot of stuff to do, but it's just,
It
Suzette's
seems more like she's the side character to
she is
Selena.
decided.
to Selena. Yeah, it's like everything involving Suzette is just her taking care of Selena,
Well,
hanging out with
Suzette,
Selena, doing
just
stuff with
like
Selena.
Selena, didn't want to do this. They were forced into it by their father. She didn't want to be a drummer or anything like that. She thought it was, a masculine position, and she
Hmm.
wanted to be more feminine. And she felt like as a female drummer she didn't get seen, she wasn't good enough, because here was her sister, a star, being put on the front, all these like beautiful clothes and everything like that, and she was so much pushed into the background. that like they
Mhm.
didn't care about her at all. And I think that was they did put in a scene where she's having this crisis, the existential crisis, and of course a little kid comes up to her and goes like, "Oh, I want to be a female drummer just like you," and suddenly
Mhm.
she's all okay with it. Like, no,
That was
I,
like her one
I,
arc,
yeah, she had
other
like
than
one arc,
Well,
her
that and
finding
then
and
her
and
love
then
I
at the
falling
doubt
in
end.
that
love with
actually
that
happened in real
dude
life.
near the end where which I thought that was the thing that also drove me crazy when when she finds out Selena and Chris are like together and Suzette's like, "You're gonna tear the band apart," but then she like ends up with this dude and she has this like conversation. She's like, "Do you know what it's like, Selena, to like love somebody and like you can't be next to them?" And I'm like, I'm glad
Yeah,
Selena's like,
so
"Are you serious?" Yes, that's my
yeah,
life.
Selena and Chris
I
had like
live
a
that.
huge, like a long distance relationship. That was another thing with like the family, the way they were like acting towards her too, which I'm pretty sure that was like real life too, where they were kind of trying to control her and minimize her from like having contact, and of course, having somebody dating somebody could have control, like Yoko Ono.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
like, yeah, no, it made me think. Well, I'm like, well, this just makes the dad and the brother and the look more in a positive light. They're like trying to look better. They had their own struggles. Blah blah blah. I actually looked at the producers and the writers.
And some of them are Selena's family.
They're
Yes.
the
See, and
brother
I was gonna
and the
ask that
dad.
question because this reminds me. This watching the show reminded me a lot of Bohemian Rhapsody, and in Bohemian Rhapsody, the granted, all the marketing materials like, yeah, this movie's about Freddie Mercury. You're gonna find out the real deal about Freddie Mercury before he died. And well, like, and the real deal apparently is that Freddie was a diva. And like, yes, he was a star and amazingly talented, but he also would like show up late or whatever. Come to find out and then the band is the perfect people. They always were on time and they
Yeah,
never partied. And in fact, Freddie went solo on his own until you find out that's not true. But who produced the movie? The band. So
yeah.
they look like they're the
I looked at
best
the
members or
I
whatever.
looked at the writer for the writers for every single one. It's mainly her brother, AB. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, that's also another reason why he probably got more screen time, his character, why it was about his struggle with producing and writing. First of all, I don't think the producing things, well, no. Trying to break into trying to have Latin music break into the American music industry. Yes, that is a struggle on its own.
I mean, it's
But
still hard now for a
yeah,
lot
no,
of crossover
absolutely.
artists to cross
Crossover
over from
artists, I
Latin to
mean,
America.
Well, I think, and this is something that I was going to bring up during the podcast was, do you think if uh, Selena had come out today, would she have been as successful? Because we see a lot of like today we see like Despacito, which was one of the biggest songs ever, and a lot of like reggaeton and like Latin music that is
yeah,
popping off right now.
but a lot of that only gets popular when a white artist puts their hands on it.
Mm,
Like
Yeah, because
Despacito got
mm-hmm,
mixed by Justin Bieber.
mm-hmm.
A lot of reggaeton is, respectfully also done by like a lot of black artists who use that.
well, I was
And
gonna
it's,
say Kali Uchis, for example, who
yeah.
is she's an American, like I think she's from California originally, but she's also Latina, and she just her last year she released a all Spanish album. I listened to it; it's really good. But even she was like, she posted on Twitter something to the effect of, "Hey, so I really wanted to do a Spanish album. I wanted to do something that was in reference to my culture and what I grew up with, but I know a lot of y'all are probably not going to listen to it anyway. So whatever." And it's like, it's true. Like like to Alex's
Well,
point, like if it's a white person, it'll get popular because that's what they'll do. But if it's a person from that culture, it's very hard to still break into the industry now. And that's after Selena has come out. Like people like you would think that after Selena, Shakira would have done a lot better with her Spanish albums. Nelly Furtado's Spanish albums would have done better. Kaylee Uchis said like all these other Hispanic females or Latino females or Chicano or where all their or from all the different regions would have more successful Spanish albums, but they haven't. Not to the level as their English
in the
albums, a
U.S.
lot of them
Yeah.
in the
Well,
US.
because
that was like
Shakira's
that. Well,
popping,
yeah, Shakira's,
Yeah, outside of the US,
right?
Shakira's
but she
dominating.
became big in the '90s too. Well, Christina Aguilera released an all Spanish album back in like the early 2000s as well. Of course, it wasn't received very popular either.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think she would be as popular just because once you are a big artist, you kind of like it's. Feel like any artist nowadays has a hard time breaking out because people are so focused on the artists we do have now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very rarely finding real new artists. Secondly, like I had said, it is difficult. Like what I saw with Selena growing up was being able to not jump, but have your two cultures intertwined. Growing up, I was too white for the Mexicans and too Mexican for the white people. So I
Mm-hmm.
never got to learn to intertwine those. I was just kind of like, okay, fine, I'm Mexican. Oh, I'm really white, whatever. Seeing having Selena do that with her music was something really beautiful. And I think a lot of artists who are Latin still have that issue themselves. That's why they created a whole Spanish album. That's why they
Mm-hmm.
create only music in English. Um, I do see with Selena Gomez, sometimes she intertwines some Spanish or she uses a Latin beat, which I think is very nice. And it's a great way to just show respect to, where your roots have come from. I think it's also people who just kind of like Nicki Minaj, like Justin Bieber. They don't look at the culture, they look at the beats and then they just pick up the music and move on. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, well, no, there's a whole story behind that music. There's a whole story, there's a whole style. Like Latin music has so many different um styles and names and things like that from what Selena played to, I'm like blanking now to just all these different parts and then connecting to all these different regions and things and they just like kind of take it and grab it and run. And so I don't think somebody could be popular like the way Selena was because even Jennifer Lopez used to be that way,
Mm-hmm.
but as soon as she really got her name out there she jumped from using Spanish music
Well,
to hip hop.
yeah, J-Lo was like the opposite problem. She like stole a lot of like she stole in. Okay, a lot of people do say that she stole from a lot of black people
And
in her like early.
I absolutely agree because then she did do the Spanish music. Then she started working with like LL Cool J, Ja Rule, and
P
then
Diddy.
yeah,
Yeah.
P Diddy. And after that, she started moving towards more hip hop, more R&B, more
When it was like profitable for her.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then like she recently, not
Don't get me
recently, I
wrong, I
don't think.
like J Lo,
No, I
but
love J Lo. No, but yeah, no, I absolutely agree. She stole that style of music and left her own behind. And then later on, there was more current music. I think the song was like Papi, where I tried to listen to it and I was like, this sounds like that Latin pop crap that gets remixed in like the club only and you don't hear and which it was. It
Mm-hmm.
was this weak version of the music she once did. She tried to go back to the Latin pop, but it was just like, no, you're singing in English and you're just saying Papi. Like that's like
that was
some
the I Love You Poppy, right?
yeah.
I Love You Poppy.
She just says I like it Papi and I'm like, one, that's creepy because I call my dad Papi. I don't like that.
See, that's
It's
always
this
been. I don't want no girl. Like, don't like ladies. Let it be known now. If you messing with me, don't call me daddy. I don't. That's creepy. I don't want
yeah,
that.
like I call my
I,
my dad. I'm like I call him. I've always called him Papi or Pa, which is like dad, or
Mhm.
it's more like a da. But I always call him Papi, and so when I hear songs like that, I'm always a little grossed out because I'm like, no, that's my father.
I was gonna
I don't
Um,
say.
use that.
Oh, sorry, Jonathan. What were you gonna
oh,
say?
I was just gonna say, like that is, it's interesting to know, both of what you guys said. Um, going back to like the series, I was gonna touch on one point that you said, Jerome, in that she has no flaws in this series. Essentially, I remember talking to you guys way back when I had first started watching the show, and that's something that I had picked up on early on in the series. Always very smiley throughout the series. She never really had any major conflict. It was all surface level.
Yeah.
There was one point where Selena says she's having a conversation with her brother, and she says, "Everybody has a B side. Nobody's just one thing," which is like the antithesis of her character, how she's portrayed in this TV series. She is only portrayed as one thing. So I thought
Mhm.
that wasn't the best. And also the tone of the show was very wonky for me. At the beginning it seemed kind of like a coming of age drama type of series. Once she became a teenager and Christian Serratos played the role, it kind of turned into like modern comedy that was portraying an 80s TV show or 80s movie, whatever.
Yeah.
It felt very light. And I know Selena's story is very inspiring for so many people, but it's also very tragic as well.
Mhm.
And I didn't necessarily feel that, J-Lo's portrayal and her movie version of Selena was very inspiring, and its legacy, holds on today. And I thought we would get something kind of the opposite of that. I thought we would get something a little grittier, something a little more dramatic, and that might not necessarily be what people want to see. But in that case, what was the point of making the show?
I
I
think
think. Oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say no. I would have loved to see that because, like I said, the way I had looked up to her, and she is called Santa Selena by a lot of people because it's a joke. It would have humanized her so much more than this like weird portrayal, and it would have been
Hmm.
nice to see her like after a show just like break down and think about quitting and being like, or like even when she was a kid, even in the Selena movie, it was still very gentle, like, oh, I don't want to sing, Dad, and he's like, oh no, you're gonna do it, you're gonna become famous, blah blah blah. To see how a real child would react, which real kids get properly angry. I mean, if you are a normal child, your reaction is going to be anger because you don't know how to control those emotions, and that's okay. And so I think they always have portrayed her as well natured, as well calmed. But when you're a musician, when you're an artist, when you're a creative person in general, your emotions and your mindset are so muddled together, you can't separate the two. And she was a
Hmm.
very creative person. She was a very good singer. So you cannot tell me she did not have some depression or anxiety, constantly having to be on the road since she was a child, never having a proper structured home, having to work and sing and learn to dance in Spanish and in English, all of that. She was mentally fine. No, she had probably multiple breakdowns behind the scene. So seeing that nitty gritty, I would have loved to see that. I think it would have humanized her, the entire family so much. But this would seem like some cheap novella story where each family had their like without the fun slapping.
Yeah.
Great thing about novellas, everybody's gonna get hit. No
Yep.
matter your gender or your age, you're gonna get smacked at least once. Especially if you're a nun. Nuns get slapped a lot for some reason.
Mm.
I was gonna say, I think because you were asking like, what is the purpose of the show? I think like especially because of what we're talking about of Selena kind of being this one note happy person all the time, is that I think this the goal of this show, especially now knowing because I didn't know that the family produced the show, is that they're trying to make this like, oh, there's gonna be like a celebration of Selena, but what the audience wanted, especially coming off because we already have a movie that is the celebration of Selena. J
Exactly.
Lo's interpretation of Selena and that
It was
movie
and even
is
she
a
had moments in that movie where she like was pissed at her family. And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that was a more real reaction.
So it's like it was a celebration of Selena, both the good and the bad of like this is this person. This is who this person was when they were alive. This is the things they did. This is how their music touched people and impacted people. Like that scene in the movie where the crowd gets riled up and they're like breaking the barricade, but then Selena like calms the audience with just her voice singing. That's like a chilling moment in the movie. And I was hoping to have something like that in the show because what people wanted, especially when Selena was announced, the series, people thought it was going to be all right. If we're doing a show, we're going to see all aspects of this. Like we're gonna see because the trailer was like we see her as a child, we see her teenagers. Like all right, we're gonna see like the real nitty gritty down to like the struggle that she really had to go through to learn Spanish so that
Mm-hmm.
she could sing in Spanish. Like maybe some darker parts of her childhood with her dad, where it's like when it's like because the movie really focuses on her as an adult for most of it. So it's like maybe we'll get to see her grow up a dad with her dad and see the struggle of that. But no, we don't see any of that. And the time we could use for that is wasted on stuff that is like, I don't
It
like
has
this
no
is
real fulfillingness.
unnecessary.
Yeah, you don't
Like,
get that. Yeah, you're right. You don't get that moment of just like, ooh, I got chills or ooh, I feel this. No, I felt
mm-hmm.
like the whole series fell flat. What you said about the life and celebration, to our fans and everybody, I recently lost my cat, Snowball, the one who's always meowing in the mic, of 20 years. And when everything first happened, people kept telling me, "Oh, she was such a sweet little kitty," or this or that. And I'm like, "No, she was an asshole." I'm like, "Don't lie to me. Don't tell me, all this stuff." No, she used to knock down the Furbo camera so I can check on her during the day. At like 2 in the morning, she used to like to grab the wooden blinds and knock on the window and scare the crap out of me. She was a little asshole. And, even to her death, I told her, look, you can't go in 2020. I won't make you stay, but you can't die in 2020 and just become another, bad event. She held out till January 1st, 2021. All right, that's what her nature was. I don't want people to come up to me and be like, oh, she was a little angel, sweet. I'm like, no, she was an asshole. That's who she was. And I think a lot of the times,
But we still
when
loved her.
yeah, I loved her. You guys loved, so many people loved her, but it's that false, oh, she was such a sweet little kitty cat. No, she wasn't. Same way with Selena. Oh, she was no, she was probably very hard to work with because she, was pushed into this as a child. She probably developed mental issues, having to wear heels all the time. Her feet were probably killing her, blistering. My feet hurt. I get so pissed at people. I don't want to talk to anybody. God, I don't know how she can dance. I don't know how any woman can dance in heels. It's amazing. I think it's a superpower. But like, and all that, and then having the person she, did love ripped away from her too, from this family, you cannot like try to present this that like, oh yeah, she was always calm and quiet. No, she was thinking about stabbing y'all.
Mm-hmm. And I
So
think
Well,
like,
that's
we never because like there's some like we don't know too much about who she was on the bus, but one thing we can definitely tell is just based off of just human
just
interaction in
human, yeah,
general is that she would not she's a person.
shit. And
She's
in the end,
not an angel literally. Like she she
yeah, and
has
I felt like with the show, like at least in the movie, they did show some gritty parts, and they showed with the scene with the barricade. In the movie, I'm sorry, in the show, they didn't have any of that. They didn't show
Mhm.
any hard points or like her being disrespectful, maybe to her siblings, being like, "Well, I'm actually the real star. Maybe you guys back off a little bit." When
mm-hmm.
they were trying to get more control, especially with her brother, cannot tell me they did not fight a good chunk of the time
Well,
because he
I
was
like
always
Yeah,
yeah, but I did understand where the brother was coming from though. Mostly because like I've as I've been producing music for the past 2 years, seeing his struggle on how to make music like good like it's one thing to make music, it's
super.
another thing to make music that will be popular and people will actually remember. That's even harder in and of itself because you have to assume what you think people want without anyone telling you what you want. And so I get where he was coming from, especially in that scene in the booth when he's like, Selena, you don't take it seriously because regardless of if you fail or succeed, you have a record deal. But the band, the producers, all of us are easily replaceable. We are all very expendable
Yeah,
in
and
the music industry.
I was going to bring that up. That was probably the only point where there was a major conflict for Selena, between Selena and somebody else, where the brother was saying you have to take this more seriously, and then 2 seconds later Selena's like, yeah, you're right. So there was, it didn't last for very long.
No, it
Like
did
the
not
biggest
last long.
the biggest
Yeah, and I mean, we all have siblings. We all
Mhm.
know what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody tries to tell us take it seriously, we're like, well, no, I'm just not going to.
Right. And her other biggest conflict was probably whether within herself was probably whether she wanted to focus on music, which she was focused on music, or whether she wanted to focus on clothes, because she, as we could
Yeah,
see from the
she
series,
was.
she loved clothes and designing and
Fashion.
shopping
Yeah,
and
no,
fashion.
absolutely. She was big on clothes. She designed all her original outfits when they first started. Um, but yeah, it's that whole like you're working with family.
There's got to be more
There is
conflict than
There's
always
this.
more,
going to be
yeah, there's more
conflict.
conflict than
And
this.
that's why I brought up like so like I don't want her memory to be false and sweet. Like I want people to know she was kind of an asshole of a cat. Like I don't understand when you're trying to present somebody's life or trying to show like, life and celebration and all that respect, why you're hiding all, the darkness, because that's who they were too. It was part of them.
Mm-hmm.
How can
Hmm.
you just shove away something that was part of them? You can't tell me Selena didn't eventually develop, like with All Stars, they develop a small diva, complex. Doesn't matter singing, acting, whatever. There will be a moment where they're like, "Oh yes, I am the best," and it's
Yeah.
like, dude, you need to calm down, or you're gonna have a downfall. Like so many actors and musicians, which some again do, and that's how they've stayed in the industry so long.
Yeah.
There have been multiple times where every actor and singer has had a fight or gotten mad at a tech person, a producer, somebody in the sound booth, and like the brother had said, yeah, we're all easily replaceable.
Mm-hmm.
And like that should have shown that should have had moment where Selena could have seen her like family more so as like humans too. Oh, this isn't just the guitar, so that this is my sister. I should really work harder for my sister. But they didn't give her that moment. Just a few seconds later, she's just like, yeah, okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
will.
back to business
Yeah.
as usual.
Hmm.
I will say too, the other thing I thought about was because you know that like we talked about her before, but the drummer girl, that's like the fan of Suzette or
Yeah.
whatever. That was an indicator already of the major problem that I feel about this show of them wasting time because we learn about this girl's family, we learn about this restaurant she works at, and then like we have a whole scene where her having a conversation with her dad. All of this just for her to have a scene where she just walks up to Suzette, asks for an autograph, and is like, I want to be a drummer. All right, cool. I'm leaving. I'm not going to be in the show anymore. And I'm like, then why did we waste all that time setting up this character like she was going to be important and she's barely in a footnote in the totality of this first season? And it's stuff like that where I'm
Maybe
like,
they were going to have her more influence, but then they realized, well, this might just give too much of a storyline to Suzette.
I just
I don't
feel
know.
like, and it's the same with the Chris Perez thing, where when Chris Perez shows up in the show, like they spend a lot of time of just all these meet cute moments with her and Chris Perez. Like we don't know A, that they're going to get married, but B, that eventually Abraham is going to see them together and kick him out because we know the story. The movie came out. We all know the story.
Well,
And
you got to remember the movie came out a while ago. We were
that's true.
kids.
That's
A
true.
lot of people haven't seen
That's a
it.
fair point.
Yeah. Do you not remember like all those kids who tweeted about when Missy Elliott sang with somebody who
Katy Perry,
Katy Perry
Super
at
Bowl.
the
And
Super
people were
Bowl?
like, oh, is this a new artist?
Yeah, and it's like no, Missy Elliott created the scenes.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
She was the 90s. So it's that same way. Some people don't know about the Selena Jennifer Lopez version. They have this.
And
Yeah.
that's a shame.
And it is horrible
That's a
shame
And
shame.
because
if
all
they don't know about the Jennifer Lopez version, that means this is their first introduction to Selena at
uh,
all.
Hmm.
which breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And also like with the Chris Perez thing, I don't like how they made those like they should have done their relationship really got tested, you know? And even at the end, her family pushed him out. They took the name that she took. They eloped, yes, but she took his name and then they took it back and like threw it away when they buried her. And it was like, she loved that man. How are you gonna do that to her? That was her name, and you just replaced it back with the name you wanted fit, and then you guys totally dismissed him and all this other stuff after her death when that was a woman he loved and he was in pain too. So
Yeah.
it's just like
It's
they
one of it's definitely one of those things where because the family is so heavily involved in the project that they have so much control over the narrative. And this is something that I don't particularly prefer when I'm watching biopics. I usually like to watch something that is not from a perspective of someone that didn't know the person or wasn't involved in the person, because then you just get the Lifetime movies, the unauthorized stories, and those could go horribly left.
Yeah.
you
Someone
mean
who
like the
knew,
ghost of Michael Jackson.
right, so, or so many of those movies. But someone who is connected to the person but is willing and able to tell their full story in all its authenticity, no holds barred,
Well, even
not
nobody
wanting
will
to
let you.
censor or filter anything.
They'll never let you tell the full authenticity because every family of that person's estate, no, 9 times out of 10, unless they just straight up hated them, um, wants you to show them at least as like some good person or whatever. Unless they are bad people, like the biopic about uh well, Charles Manson's one, but also what's the one with Zac Efron plays
Oh, Ted Bundy.
yeah, like the Ted Bundy one.
No,
No
Ted
one's
Bundy.
gonna defend Ted Bundy. No one's gonna be defending Ted Bundy.
Look, there was a lot of crazy women that defended Ted Bundy in that time. There was a
Sure.
woman
Well,
who
yeah, at the
literally
time,
married him and
yes.
had his child.
I just mean now, but yeah, at that time, yeah.
Let's not talk too much about Ted Bundy on Selena's podcast.
That's fair.
That's fair.
That's true. Well,
Um,
I think when I mentioned the family was involved, a lot of things seem clearer to you guys, but you
hmm
can't have the
Oh,
family.
I knew the family was involved. I
Oh,
just
you
didn't
did?
know to what extent. Yeah, I
Oh,
didn't
they
know
were
that the brother
writer
had
and
been,
director. The
because I
brother
had
was technically a writer in every episode. That's the whole
because I
thing.
had seen like Suzette in interviews and everything promoting the series.
but
That's the
see,
whole thing. The family already was controlling. You can tell it.
hmm
That's exactly like um Michael Jackson's mother or father directing a series about his childhood. They're not going to talk about all the times they beat him or all the times they like made him miss school and all this stuff. They're going to be like, no, he loved to dance, he was always really into music, this and that. No, you treated your son horribly. Everybody knows it. You can try putting out the series. And I think with Selena, although she's huge in the Latin culture, she's not huge in the American culture anymore. Not like she was, not like back in the 90s or the early 2000s.
hmm
So now they're able to manipulate the story the way they want to. And you see that, yeah, with like Bohemian Rhapsody. The band was able to manipulate the story to make it look like Freddie Mercury was insane, but the band can't lie and say like, oh yeah, we never went out partying and drinking like in the movie and we were always on time and respectful.
right.
No, dude, you were a band in the 80s. That's enough
N-
said. So
Now,
it's like, yeah, I think they use this way to like kind of manipulate the new story.
mhm.
Same way with a Bohemian Rhapsody, and
But it's just, and especially the thing that was really like, and this is why I was like, it's not because one of the things I noticed, I was like, man, Abraham in this series is not the Abraham in the movie. Because in the movie, Abraham's very cold. Like he's very rarely do you see him like actually. There's a few times in that movie where he's like warm to Selena. Most of the time he's like the overbearing manager. In this, he can be cold. And they do a duality thing where sometimes he's like warm, like especially with his wife. Him and his wife kind of always see eye to eye, which I don't think that's true. I'm sure there are a lot of times his wife wanted to smack him across the head with like a shoe or something. But
Chancla.
yeah, but in this movie or in the series, yeah, like you have Abraham. Just he there's moments where he'll do things like he'll throw his son in a dumpster to get peach cans or whatever. And then and you're like, okay, so that makes more sense. But then you'll have the moment, for example, where he keeps telling Selena, be who you are, Selena. Be like, be your own person. Okay, that doesn't track though when he sees her with Chris Perez, he's like, no,
Or when he
that's
literally
whatever.
pulled her out of school.
Right. And she's like, I like going to school. I like hanging out with my friends. He didn't ask her that question. He just was like, well, she's not going to school no more. Like, I'm just, like that. You're telling me that scene isn't important for us to see, like the conflict between Selena maybe fighting back and be like, Dad, I don't want to leave school. I love being in the band, but I also like
But yeah.
have my friends. I also do want to get my education. Like these things are also important to me. That scene would have been important to see. That's like and
He
stuff like
made
that that's
so
missing.
many things an ultimatum for her.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big problem. And you know what? Sadly, Mexican fathers, they're not emotional. They're not warm. I did not have one growing up. He was around, but he was not a warm man. So, like, seeing that also, I was just like, this isn't like an 80s and 90s Mexican father. Thankfully now a lot of, men have learned to be more warm to their children, to be, hug them more, this and that, which I think is fantastic. It definitely needs to be something that should be touched on. And, you guys, when you guys have children, you hug your children. Understood? Tell them you
Yeah.
love them
Can
every
you
day.
can you not see me hugging my children?
You actually can see both of you. You're actually both very warm. Even you, Jerome, when you try to pretend to be cold, you're warm. Um,
Yeah.
Drum is warm.
I don't think no.
He's a
I'm
big old
definitely.
softy.
you
I'm
are. You're
gonna be
actually
a.
very
I'm gonna
warm.
be and I'm gonna love my
Which
kids. My
is
little
fantastic, and
legs.
it needs to be done because growing up, yeah, in the 80s and 90s, the father was always, even on TV, the father was always seen, sitting on the couch coming home from work or something like that, or I just want like 5 minutes alone. Which, yeah, having these warm moments, like, no, especially having a father who was so domineering about you becoming the musician he never got to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, having those moments where he's like, "Oh, do what you dream to do." No, I like very recently my father has started to do that for me. I've had cousins who are not good with the law. I don't want to say they're more side against the
Remember,
law.
we on Spotify,
I'm
Alex.
trying to say it in a way. They
We on
have told me,
Spotify, Google Play, Apple.
right.
We're
So
everywhere.
the misfits in my family, they have told me to go with my dreams and to, like, I'm like, yeah, I don't want kids. I just want to go to school. They're like, yeah, no, don't have kids. It's cool. They have been more warm and like, follow your dreams, do what makes you happy, don't listen to your father, do what you want to do. So like the misfits, because they're younger and have more experience, are warmer than like the 80s and 90s father. So seeing that, I was just like, no, 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 no. This is not a Mexican father in that time. No, no, no.
I mean, even which my
Speaking of,
father's not Mexican, but he's black. I have a dad that's, he has like at least growing up. Now it's because we're adults, it's different. Like me and my sister, but growing up, I had a dad with duality like that, where it's like my dad. When granted, he wasn't like Abraham, he wasn't that extreme, but he would encourage me to do what I wanted to do and push me to do whatever. But at the same time, there were times where I felt like I needed like creative support, and instead I got a cold like, well, like, well, yeah, that's great, but you could do better. Like you could keep going, and it's like, and it's stuff like, and so I could relate to that of like, like when AB is excited, he's like, Dad, my song's on the radio, and he's like, great, now work on the next one. Let's go. All right, bye. And I'm just like, I felt that.
My
I've
my
had that
mom
experience.
my mom has done that with me and my sister, which we're kind of like, haha, it's made us like go further in life. Um, she kind of puts us in a competition together, and so like we'll go a little harder sometimes than we need to because she'll say something and we're like, well, I know she did that. Well, like, what are you gonna do then? Be like, well, now I got to do something more. Now I got to be more extra. She has done that move to us, which I say, which is probably what led my sister to get her master's and all that. And now I think I'm like, well, now I got to go get a master's. Now I have to do something more. You should see us when we do Mother's Days and birthday gifts. The last Mother's Day, I think I forgot what Christian got her. Uh, but I was like, oh yeah, I got her this nice smelling soap. It's imported from Spain and it arrived 2 days before Mother's Day, while yours arrived 3 days after. Like we got really technical. I'm like, oh yeah, and I got her this other honey, something soap, honey oatmeal soap. It is handmade from goat's milk up in Maine. I'm like, what did you get her again? Oh yeah, something off of Amazon. No, that's cool. That's cool. So we'll like get like that with gifts even.
It's competitive.
Yeah, it's
Well, going into speaking of that parent-child dynamic, going into some of the things that I actually kind of liked about the series with the parent-child narrative, I kind of liked that AV kind of took on the qualities of his dad as the series progressed with, his seriousness and intensity about his music, his love for his family that he was creating.
Mhm.
Another thing that um, I did like that when they were in discussions with Jose from EMI, he was 100%. First of all, I feel like you could tell that he was on their side from the beginning, even though,
He kept it real
yeah.
with them. Like he was
yeah,
never like, yes, it like from an outside perspective you could be like, oh, he's cheating them or whatever. No, he's just keeping it real with them. Like this is how the music industry works. You think this is how you think it's simply you make the music and then people will love it. It's not like that. And I feel that especially because a lot of what he says in this show in relation to the 90s is still true today
exactly. Like
about like the
he
Latin
was saying that,
crossover.
yeah, and he was saying that the big labels, the big companies, they just collect artists like baseball cards, hoping that one of them will pop off and get big, which is so true. I've seen so many artists who have so much potential, but the label doesn't do anything with them because they just have them in their back pocket just in
Mhm.
case they happen to get big, but they don't want to promote them or
You
anything.
know who's bad
Mm.
for that? Atlantic Records.
Oh
Atlantic
yeah.
Records will sign anybody. You know who they signed? Bad Baby. You know why? Because she was popular for all of like 5 or 6 months. Where is she now? Nobody knows because but they picked her up. She's technically still signed and they just
Didn't
wanted
she
her in
have
their.
like what is that? Did she something happen? Or
I
like
don't
bad
think so.
baby like some
I think she just grew up and is just, at some point, like the whole Cash Me Outside thing kind of just died off. And it's just like, all right, well, we're moving on. That's what happens to people who get popular on the internet. Like, if you don't have something to keep you
don't have
engaged, people
real
who engage,
talent.
yeah, they'll
You
move on
don't
eventually, like at some point. And it's,
she didn't.
so I felt him on that when Jose is like, you don't want to be one of these bands that, yes, they have you signed, but the reality is they don't care about you or your music. They
Hmm.
just want to have what's hot now in their employ in case you
What
become popular.
there was a singer. I think her name was Sarah something. She created the song "I'm Not Gonna Write You a Love Song." A
Oh,
lot of people. Sarah.
Sarah Beria. I forget how to pronounce her last name.
Yeah.
Beria.
Well,
Oh,
I
Sarah
want to say
Bareilles.
Borealis, but is that right?
Bareilles.
Sarah Borealis?
either way, she wrote that song. I'm not gonna write you a love song.
Mhm.
or all you want is for me. And originally it always sounded like, oh yeah, like she's saying no to a guy, like, you're not gonna be one. But it was really a response to her record company. They're like, look, you're a single female, you should have love songs out there about wanting this guy. She's like, no, I don't want to do it. And they kept putting so much pressure on her, she ended up writing this song and was like, I'm not gonna write you the love song that you want. Leave me alone. And a lot of companies also do that. They will see a female artist and they're like, well, I need you guys to put out love songs now. I need you to, talk about this or that. They want to control also the music that is sung by them like that. And
Mhm.
that is really well seen with like Lady Gaga and Katy Perry when she first started out. She was literally a bubblegum pop like singer. That was it. She was
Mhm.
sugary. That was all she had, all the substance.
Sugar and sex appeal. That was
Yeah,
like her
that
two
was the
things.
only thing they allowed her to have. And so I did like when the brother brought that up about the control the companies can have of you if you're not careful. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
also, yeah, not just about the music. They want to control your appearance, they want to control, the type of music, how
When
you
the
present
photographer was
yourself.
saying, when the photographer was saying, "Look at that skin. Look at that
That
skin,"
That
creeped
she
creeped
me
said
me
in
out,
out
especially
Mexico.
when
so
he's
bad.
like holding her hair. I just wanted to like smack his hand down, like, stop it. Stop touching her hair.
I
Stop it.
hate it when people used to touch my hair because I had a quite a few white friends who liked to grab my hair and be like, "It's so thick. I just want to run my fingers through it." I'm like, "I've only known you for like a year. Yes, we're friends, but like not that close. I don't even let my mom brush my hair since I was like 7. So like, no, you're not gonna run your fingers through it." I liked that
Or touch
showed
my
because
face.
that is a big issue
Hmm.
for people of color. People want to touch our hair for some reason.
I never had enough hair for people to touch, thankfully. So that was actually a good thing.
The amount of mainly women, it's mainly women.
It's mainly women,
It is mainly women. I'm
I've
gonna admit
it's
that.
a shame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had
who
experience because like I've had experiences with the like when you have the waves and people are like,
Ah, the
oh, look
waves.
at
Yeah.
those waves. Okay, look at those
I
waves.
have never looked at either one of your hairs and just thought I want to caress your head spontaneously. I don't know why that thought would appear in people's heads, and it always weirds me out because I, grew up with that too. And I was just like, why, like, what is with hair? People in hair, and
I don't
like,
know what
Yeah.
it
yeah, no,
is.
that scene creeped me out so much. Especially, yeah. Oh, look at that skin. It's like,
That and then also the
Okay.
designer who's like when she has the jacket, she spends all that day designing that jacket,
mm-hmm.
and then he's like, "Oh well, we don't like it. Pick something. What do you think is you? What do you think of you?" She's like, "That jacket.
Yeah.
That's me. Why can't I just wear that?"
He wanted her
One
to
of the
show
other
her
things
soul.
that I have to one of the other things that I have to mention that I did like was the music. I was jamming like almost every single episode. The only
Mhm.
songs that I feel like I 100% knew of Selena's were "Dreaming of You," "I Could Fall in Love," and "Como Se Puede." And I feel like in this series, I was
Bitty
able
bitty
to
bum
be.
bum.
Oh, yeah, that too, that
I
too,
was like,
that
wait a
too.
minute, you have to know bitty bitty bum bum.
And La
And
Bamba.
I didn't, but I didn't.
Bitty
Yeah,
bitty
I
bum
didn't
bum.
really. The
Oh,
Bitty
that's
Bitty
that's
Baba
the
and
same
La
thing.
Bamba.
I
No,
thought those
they're
are
two
two
separate
separate
things.
songs. Yeah.
No, those two separate songs.
But I didn't realize that she did a cover. I didn't realize that she did multiple covers, first of all, and I didn't realize that she did a cover of La Bamba. So
That I didn't
that,
know that she did a cover of La Bamba.
Yeah.
yeah,
But it's I think this show overall, if we're going to talk about like if we want to talk about like if it was necessary, I don't think first of all I didn't think it was necessary, but I was excited for it. And now seeing it, I think it's even less so necessary cuz I feel like the movie did a much better job of displaying Selena's story. Now granted, if
I
season
have to
2 comes
interrupt. I'm
out,
sorry. The song is called "Como La Flor," not "Como Se Puede."
oh,
Oh, I was
yes.
like, I don't recall that song ever. But I was like, maybe I. maybe it's a song I just haven't heard of hers.
It's a remix.
Uh,
Anyway, continue, Jerome.
but I was saying like it's. I don't think it's necessary because I feel like the movie does a better job of telling the same story in a more realistic fashion. But that being said, again, this is season 1. This is not the full story. So maybe people will take these like the family. I don't think they will, but there's a chance that they might take these criticisms that people have given of season 1 because I don't think they're in production right now because of COVID. So maybe when they film season 2, they'll apply some of these criticisms to like that everybody's been having so far with the series because the reception, at least I'm seeing from Twitter and all the other places for the show, has been lukewarm. It has not been an over a resounding like we are excited for this show. It has been just pretty much people like the fans of Selena being like, it's cool that there's another Selena thing and people are talking about Selena, but I kind of prefer the movie if they've seen the movie. And for those who haven't, they're just like, all right, this show's all right, I guess. I guess I'll just go back to watching something else. So it's just like, I think if they apply some of these criticisms of giving Selena more humanity, maybe like, having the family not be as much the focus, or if they are going to continue to be the focus, like,
With Selena and her and the band, her family was the focus. Her family had control over everything, and that's why you
mhm.
can't leave them out of the story.
Don't
Um,
leave them out. I'm just saying give Selena more time instead of her just being more or less a supporting character in a show that's titled by the where she's
yeah,
supposed to be
it
the
feels like
title
they're just
character.
piggybacking off her name. And I
Mhm.
agree with that. It's just yeah, like if you want to tell the family the story, you have to tell the family of. I'm sorry, if you want to tell the story of the family, you also have to tell the story of Selena
Mhm.
because whether you want to separate those two things or not by trying to make her a secondary character, it wasn't considered the Partridge family. They weren't all on equal ground, and they are very aware of this as well. The sister, the brother, and everything.
Especially the sister. I think Suzette
Yeah,
is in like in
and I
real life.
think,
She's always understood like Selena is the
oh no,
star.
yeah, I'm sure, absolutely. And I think even seeing her struggling with that and having to come to terms with like, yeah, my dad made me the drummer because he heard Selena singing, she has a better voice, and then growing up with all this, uh, Suzette had a weight problem too, which is common for a lot of Spanish people. I'm chunky too. Um, she had to deal with that, and
Which
then
they didn't really discuss at all in the
yeah,
series.
because a
Nope.
lot of
Haven't touched it.
although drumming does help with the upper body, you're sitting there a good chunk of time too,
Mm-hmm.
and the beats didn't have like the rhythm of like a punk pop band where they're like moving so intensely, and then but then she has to be in the shadow of Selena, who people thought were perfect, knew it wasn't, but thought. And the outfits that she wore, the singing, the dancing, the heels, the movements, and everything like that. And she had to be such put on the back. And I think had they shown a little more of that aspect too, other than, oh yeah, I don't want to be a drummer. Like everybody has that like self crisis. I don't want to go to work, on Monday. I don't want to do what I do.
Well, I feel like they breeze over, and it's I. You know what I think they should have done. Thinking about it now, they should have spent more time with them in the childhood because they do a little bit of them with the childhood, like the first episode, and then they immediately jump to her in high school, and then go to like her in in her 19, when she's 18, 19, 20, whatever. But it's like that time when they were kids is probably the juiciest stuff of the story because Suzette didn't really want to play drums. She was forced to play drums and be a part of this family
They
band that
they
she
were
didn't
all
ask to even
forced
be
to it.
with. Well, at
Selena
least,
didn't want to do it either.
but at least AB was already learning how to play bass. He was kind of interested in music, even if he didn't know he wanted to do it professionally. He was interested, and
Well,
Selena liked to sing. Suzette didn't even want to play drums at all and was forced to play drums because, like, oh, we've got everybody else. We need a drummer. And it's like, then get a drummer. I don't want to play drums.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Suzette, it wanted nothing to do with the music at all. She really didn't. Selena did enjoy singing. She just didn't want to learn to sing in Spanish. She didn't want. She
Yeah,
said she
she
didn't
wanted
want
to
that
sing
complication.
pop songs.
Yeah, she wanted to be like the next Britney Spears, or
Well, in her time, it would have been what, like Jody Watley.
yeah. I was trying to think of like '80s stars. I couldn't really.
Yeah, she wanted to be like the next Jody
She
Watley or
yeah,
Paula Abdul.
Paula Abdul
Hmm.
or
Yeah,
something like that. She did.
I
Yeah,
did
she did.
appreciate the posters. The poster game is on point, and the soundtrack in this movie in this series
Hmm.
is
They
on
had
point.
some
They
Paula
play some
Abdul in there.
jams, huh?
Yeah,
They had some Paula Abdul in there. I
Yeah,
told you
Paula
of
Abdul
I
course,
is
was
in
Paula
scared.
there.
Abdul. You can't have an '80s movie without Paula Abdul.
Exactly.
I feel like that's just
They
not
play
allowed.
doing it right. Like that's a great funk classic. Like,
Hmm.
baby, you could do it. Like when that came on, I was like, I know that bass line. I feel it. I dig it.
And now I ultimately want to check. I'd be interested in checking out more of Selena's music, and listening to their albums and everything.
Hmm.
Sadly, she only had like didn't have that many albums or
She only
songs.
had the two, right?
She only
Two
had
or
the
three.
two albums.
Okay.
She did sing a lot of cover songs because they didn't really get big until like 1990, and then she got killed in 1994.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They did a lot of state fairs and stuff like that, and I think again that would have been nice to see that struggle of because they didn't even get like a tour bus. They had an old school bus that they renovated. They called it Big
Yep.
Bertha.
That. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right. I think seeing more of that struggle when they were younger, because then they already saw when, they had the money. They had a lot of the reason, well, not a lot. Part of the reason the father had pushed them so hard the way he did was because he himself could not support his own family,
Mhm.
and with that kind of patriarchy back in the past, it was all solely on the man, especially a lot in like, you know, my brain stopped. Especially a lot in like people of colors families. It's the masculinity is really heavy with toxic. It's toxic. It's very toxic. It all gets placed on the man, and sadly, not that was not being able to be pushed away quite like with white men. White men got to release a little bit of that toxicity a little bit later because I think because of people like my brain is thinking like Twisted Sisters and stuff like that. You
Mhm.
know, black men, Hispanic men,
That like
even Asian men.
rage
Yeah,
culture.
yeah, they got the rage culture. People of color really didn't. So that male toxicity stayed a little bit longer, and I think showing that how much that brought him down, that he couldn't provide for his own family, like would have been a great way and almost like created an anti-hero because then
Yeah,
you
where you
like
understand where he's coming from.
yeah, you could have been like,
You don't
okay,
agree with him, but you
no,
understand
yeah,
him.
you kind of get more of this backstory, like, okay, he really wanted to pursue music. He's too old now. If he goes off on his own, now he's just left his children and wife basically with nothing to pursue his dreams. And that's how Coco was as well. Yeah, went
I
off to pursue his
and I've
dreams and then
heard
died.
that criticism of people saying they would like to see more about like more of Abraham's backstory to
Because
understand why he is so adamant to make like well was because at this point in the show like they're already a band, but why he was so adamant to make the band what it is and why it's always his way or the highway and
right,
whatever because there are a lot of times I kept getting mad because I'm like, dude, you're just the manager. Like, AB writes the songs, Selena performs them, the other bandmates you add later on, like Pete and Joe and stuff, they help write songs. All you do is literally manage the band. So you shouldn't get a say on what the band plays or whatever, or how the music should sound when AB is the one that's the director basically of all of that
right, exactly. And
entirely.
seeing why he needed that control, seeing why, knowing why he was constantly like on top of them and kind of refusing to give him a childhood and a life separate from the music
Mm-hmm.
because Selena did not get that. I mean, she really only had a relationship with one person, and that was a member of her band. That was the people she got to, be around. She didn't get to have her own life outside of like Selena. She didn't get to have the privacy. when she was in her house, it was with the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Which
think having, yeah, that story of like why he became this way would have helped, at least showing in the earlier life of Selena's life, and why all of a sudden he just started pushing them and pushing them. I know it was a good chunk was to live out his own dream through them, but like having that more well explained of like why he needed to have this outlived even through his children, I think would help a lot, because again, sadly, a lot with creative careers, there is a connection to mental disorders because you're expressing yourself so openly that it makes you vulnerable, and you're going to have those moments where it's just too difficult. And I
Mm-hmm.
think had they just shown that yeah, there's a vulnerability when you're making this art, would have made, I think, everybody in the series, Father, Selena, Suzette, AB, more human than they allowed them all to be.
Yeah, which ultimately it would have been better if they would have explored that more. Selena's internal thoughts towards her dad, towards her brother, towards her family in general,
Mm-hmm.
which I think would have made for a more thought out and more humanly realistic portrayal of Selena. So ultimately, let's wrap this up because I think we've
Well,
we've explained a
yeah,
lot of
we've
thoughts on
gone.
Selena.
Well, Jonathan, do
Ultimately,
you want to go first? Because I feel like me and Alex have kind of
oh, on my
dominated a lot
rating.
of
Yeah,
this
yeah, no,
conversation.
we've
Okay.
done, yeah. All
Um,
fairness, this
I
is
was thinking about this a little bit, and I think I'm gonna give it a solid C. Um, I was debating between to add a plus or minus to that, but I'm gonna give it a solid C. Like I said, I enjoyed the music. The acting was great for what they were given, the script they were given, the circumstances they were given, everything they were given, the tone they were given. I think the acting was great. The music was great. I loved getting to see all the different places that they went to, the setting and everything. I thought that was great, but the story just didn't hit. I wish they would have given Selena more character. I wish they would have, because they, when it's being produced by her family, and I won't like rehash what we already talked about, but when it's being produced by her family, you would expect that they would know every single thing almost about this person, but it seems like a stranger ultimately just wrote Selena's character. So that's my biggest gripe with the series. And who wants to go next?
Alex should go next.
um I I'd give it a D. I don't really want people seeing this series because it is such a bad interpretation of Selena, I think. Um and I think it's just missing bigger parts that could have a bigger influence on people. And then you get this like watered down version. So it's like, yeah, I'm super excited that there is a series with like a Latin family. Um and with somebody who was a big impact in my life and in, culture and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's just such a bad portrayal of, I think, even the family and Selena, and not bothering to touch on like having to intertwine between the Mexican culture, the American culture, the white culture, all this stuff. I feel like they just completely left it, and it was a big deal to Selena. In interviews that I saw with her, she always mentioned that, and it is a big deal, especially in, sadly, to still sadly to in today's world, that you have to sometimes decide, well, are you this or are you this? Or, for people, who are mixed races, they always feel like they have to decide, are you this or are you this? Or, growing up person of color, are you this or this? And it's just like she was able to show that you can be both and not lose yourself, but they completely just left that out. And it's like, why? That's such a good like thing that was such a good representation she was. And it's just seeing that not being there just was like, well, this doesn't feel like even a Selena series. And then continually watching on, I was like, no, I don't think it's even worth watching, really. I want to give it a higher grade because again, it is something Latin represented and Mexican even. But it's bad. It's just bad. Okay. Don't want it to be bad, but it's bad.
Yeah, I would have. Once I'll just say this one quick thing, and then Jerome, you'll give your grade.
Well, I actually have
Um,
one question for Alex, so go ahead and do
okay.
it.
I would have preferred this probably as a limited series, maybe on HBO or something. I when I first heard the idea that they were producing Selena series, I remember months and months and months ago we talked about like how are they going to do this? Is it going to be all her life in one? Are they going to stretch it out? And what they did with it was they stretched it out, but they didn't do anything with the stuff that they stretched out. You would have thought that they would have put more meat in it, but instead we just got the skin. We just
They
got the
really only focused on the years she was famous. That's it.
exactly.
You got
Yeah.
nothing really before, and they basically stopped it maybe 2 years before her death, and it's like,
Right. I would have preferred if you just started where you were going to start, maybe her early years, and make it like 10 or 12 episodes and go into when she passed away. I would have preferred that.
all right, Jerome, what was your question?
My question was gonna be, if you like, do you would you have liked to like, or rather, because I don't know too much about Mexican culture, uh, but is there any Mexican singers or performers or actors or artists that you would have preferred they would have made a an original series or a movie off of in place of this series? That would have been something nice to see.
Probably, um, but I don't think any of them are well enough known in America to do that. I think Selena really is that grand holding between the two worlds. Because even like artists who are not Mexican, um, such as like Pitbull, he's intertwined himself so much into the American culture and things of that nature. He doesn't even really call himself a Latin singer anymore. Same with like Jennifer Lopez, even Shakira when she has songs made for the US, it's very much cutting out, the language she originally uses when she's, singing in what country? Colombia. So I don't think I would have preferred another one just because a lot of it with watching with these actors and these musicians and they're intertwining with the American music and video industry, they just lose themselves and they go from being a Latin American artist to just another American artist. And I actually feel that way a lot with like hip hop and R&B songs. I grew up listening to rap as a child because I grew up in the city, and then I also just liked it in general. And I saw them as they got older, they got more popular and they lost that struggle from the streets in their music, and then they started just talking about like pouring down champagne, riding boats, diamonds, and all that stuff, and getting that money. And it's just like, well, now you're just another one of those artists. So I don't think I have anybody just because Selena is like that golden goose of intertwining. And I think it's honestly because she died so young.
That's
She didn't have the chance to be taken over by the American music industry.
Mm.
yeah, her story is so unique in that it's like we wonder we celebrate her life, but we wonder what could have been. It's almost like I was thinking of, it's not a direct comparison, but it's like I was thinking of Aaliyah as well, how she's
Yeah,
so, yeah, she's so celebrated as well, and she died around the same age.
yeah, she died
um
so young and so early into her career. The beginning
mhm,
music was amazing, and it was they compared her well, when Selena came out, the movie. They were like, "Oh, Jennifer Lopez got the career Selena should have had." Eventually
mm,
Jennifer Lopez moved on to singing, and then the American singing, and then the things like that. And then with Aaliyah, they compared Sierra. I remember they're like, "Oh, Sierra
mm,
got the career Aaliyah should have had," but then Sierra also kind of sold out too. Her songs became just more about sex and things of that nature. And it was like, well, maybe I'm a little happy that their music got cut. So I don't want to say I'm happy they're dead,
But we
but I'm
can
happy
appreciate that
that
we
you're
can appreciate
able
that
the
moment.
yeah, that moment that it feels like this music was real before the American music industry touched it. And
Hmm.
I think this series feels like the American movie industry has now touched it. So now
Mm.
there's no real conflict. There's no real struggle. There's no knit and grit. They have given control to people who want to make her, preserve this like angelic hue around her when it's like, no, she was human. I respect her. I love her music. I think she's talented and she's a brilliant artist, but she was still human and a creative human. I'm a creative human. I know you two are, and I know that there's a struggle when doing what you love too. And it's just like there's got to be moments where she probably thought this isn't going anywhere. I've now just wasted my entire youth on this. Seeing not having that, I think we've lost so much of what this series could have been for so many people, especially not just those, Mexican or Latin, but for those wanting to break out into the music industry and kind of being able to show that you can hold on to yourself. You can allow yourself to break, but you need to break for yourself. Do not break because others have put the pressure on you. It's you. Break down sometimes, cool, but let it be because you broke down, not because somebody made you break down. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
can explain that, but so yeah, I think it would be hard to choose like an actor or musician from nowadays because it's just they've all been just too intertwined now with
I just meant in
music industry.
history in general, like whether it be Selena's time or even before her time, and because I asked that question because I think about like seeing this series reminds me of the most recent Harriet Tubman movie, Harriet,
Oh
where
yeah.
in that movie Harriet Tubman is like basically like a black superhero, and while on one hand that is a good idea on
I actually
paper,
really like that movie. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm not.
I no. The movie is all right
Black.
at best. Like it's not like I'm not gonna sit here and be like the movie was trash because it wasn't. But at the same time, a piece I would see a lot of people online who didn't like Harriet for that same reason of Harriet Tubman. Yes, she did a lot to help Black people and do this and that, but she was also a human person, and it feels like you're not getting um a reflection of this person. It feels like you're getting a characterized reflection of this person. And the Selena series feels the same way. Is where you're getting a characterized version of Selena, of like Selena was really always happy. She was always positive. Whenever things were going wrong, Selena would just pick it
Um
run up. And it's like, I'm sure she did do those things. And she was that person sometimes. But I would also love to see the moments when she wasn't that person, because that would make that's the relatable side that makes other people be like,
they did that
I
also
understand
with
you.
Mulan, the live series action. A lot of
Yes.
people were upset because they're like, look, Mulan trained, she worked hard, she had to catch up, and she became a great soldier by pushing herself in those moments. But then they show video of her as a child at the beginning. I never actually watched the movie, and she's already got that like,
Oh, I've seen that scene. No,
yeah,
you're right.
where she slides down the thing, where she's already got the light footing technique down, and that takes a really long time to develop. That's something you have to be careful with. And then she, her staff falls out of the air, so they made her into something, and it was just like, well, no, now she's already now a superhero as a child. She's already like great and powerful. It's like, no, then what's the real struggle in this movie? Where does Mulan grow the strength? And Mulan also is a real person who did all this, and then they
Kind of,
changed now.
because the Mulan they
The
base it.
Mulan Disney is not.
Disney is, yeah, because
Mulan,
Disney's basing it off the poem or a tale. I forget if it's a poem or a
it's
tale.
a
I know it's
tale. There was a real person named, there was a real woman, Mulan, who did all that. Well, not how Disney portrayed her in the cartoon or even in the movie. Um, but even that was like, well, now you've taken the tale, twisted it once, and now twisted it again to make her seem even grander. But she wasn't grand. It's called character development. It's in real life too.
So
Yeah.
with
So
all the talk
uh
of
oh
tail
well I haven't
twistiness, Jerome, what is
Yeah,
your rating? Because
yeah,
we are
so
running like long.
we
this
are.
is true. We're at an hour and a half. Or almost an hour and a half. Honestly, my grade is a D on this. I think I agree with I agree with everything Alex said. Um just like honestly, I think this show is was very disappointing for me because I was super excited. Again, no shade to the performances in this movie. I think everyone acting wise does a good job, but it's just in the script writing. And I feel like I say this a lot because I've said this for Fantasy Island, I said this for Wonder Woman, and I said it, yeah, and I'm saying it here. But it's in the script. It's like it's in the portrayal of the, and it's the thing is like you're dealing with real people. You're not dealing with fictional characters. So you owe a respect and a service to the real people in this story to tell it in a way that it is not just your interpretation. It's what happened. Because for a lot of people, like you were saying, Alex, for a lot of people this is their introduction to Selena. They've never seen the Jennifer Lopez movie, and for a lot of people they've probably never heard the music. So for
Yeah,
them, this is their first experience being introduced to this person that really existed. And so that this will determine for them if they want to invest time into getting to know who Selena was, getting to know her story, listening to her music. And if the portrayal is not pure and people can tell, they won't bother. Because you clearly didn't care enough to tell this person's story in a way that's relatable or feels real. So why should I invest my time in something you barely care about?
that's true.
Hmm.
Because like a lot of times, I told Jonathan one time, I'm like, I will jump on like a Twitter page or feed or something, and I'll see they mention one person, and because I found, I mean, just this is just a small example. I found their like post interesting, and then I found the comment interesting. I jump onto that person's page, then I keep going down a wormhole. It's the same way when people watch movies. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know that was a real person. Let me look them up," and you end up looking them up and going down that wormhole. And I
Hmm.
don't think this series will
Inspires
fuel
them.
people enough to go down that wormhole.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Hopefully they take our notes. Hopefully they listen to our podcast. Writers, if you're listening, we want
I'm
more
sure they're
depth.
mad at us at this point. They're
Yeah.
just like, oh, they didn't
Oh
like
yeah,
the
They
no, they
show.
don't
they
like
Forget
turned it
us.
them.
off. They turned it off the
I mean,
second Alex said, "Yeah, I didn't like it." Um,
the Mexican didn't like it. I mean,
The two black people, we
that's
don't care about them. But the Mexican girl, she didn't like our show. Well, forget her. Cut this off. Cut off the podcast.
they started it, right? Maybe if they, showed a good one, it'd be not much of a
Yeah.
so
problem.
season two, all we just want is some depth in Selena. We want to get to know her. We want to see what's behind the smiley face and the bubbly personality.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, where can we find you at on social media, Alex?
I'm at living my okayest life on Instagram, and that's pretty much where I spend my time.
Cool, Jerome.
I'm at Not Jerome Rhett on Instagram. Been doing January. So for those of you who are musicians out there and you're listening to this podcast, uh, you're listening to it in a timely manner because for those who don't know, January is where you make a song every day in January, much like stuff like Inktober and stuff like that. Uh, make some stuff. I might just like it. I might just look at it and send it over to the first ones to die at gmail.com. I might just give it a listen. If not, come on over to my page at Not Jerome Red on Instagram. I'm putting up beats every day. So far, I've been doing pretty good, being making a beat every day. So you can hear some of the beats. Who knows? Some of them might appear on the podcast. You never know. And also go to follow me at RoboZoo Media on Instagram as well. Yeah, I think that's it.
Cool.
And
And
you, Jonathan?
I'm at Jonathan Keys everywhere. You can follow us, the first ones to die, at the first ones to die. Instagram, Twitter,
TikTok.
YouTube, TikTok, wherever. If you made it to the end of this podcast, first of all, bravo to you. You a real G.
We appreciate it.
Secondly, type in on any of our socials or email us, whatever. Email us. What should they? What should they send us?
Your favorite Selena song, if you have one. If
Yeah,
not, what's your favorite Spanish language song? Whether that be something that's a little more Americanized or something that's like the OG, the old school, whatever it may be. So we want to see what the people
Or
are
send
feeling.
us a
I
cute
was.
picture of your pet. I always enjoy
Yes,
those.
send us a picture of your pet.
That
I was
too.
just gonna say like a keyword like squid
Oh,
How is
or
squid a
or
key
bubbles.
word? I feel like we're holding these people hostage now at this time.
If they
that's
This part
right.
send
of the
us
Keep listening to
podcast.
this podcast. You
if they
thought it
send
was
us
over, but
squid,
really we gonna keep going for another three
Seriously,
hours.
at the end of when the cameras are off, I want to talk to you about how a keyword is squid. What is squid? Who uses the word squid?
I
All
do.
right.
Okay.
I did learn it's not a squid, but it's an octopus. Octopuses like to just punch animals for no reason. You just go.
My view of octopuses has gone down the drain. All right. With that being said, we hope you have a wonderful day, night, morning, whenever you're listening to this. And we will see you next week when we will be doing some trivia. We're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to have some fun here. All right. So you don't want to miss that. There are major stakes on the line for the future of this podcast. So
Yep.
tune in next week and we will
Someone
see
might actually be the first one to die. You never
for
know.
real. You never know. Virtually. You heard it here first. We will see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.